This is the Dreamers Podcast, episode 29, with journalist, author, and celebrity ghostwriter Pauleanna Reid. Today is August 3rd, 2021.
Never let what a man brings to the table be the only thing you have to eat. I think that women should definitely have their independence. I think that we should just be very mindful of the people and the partners we bring into our life. I think that we should have a say in the financial decisions within the household. I think that we should be in the know and aware of the money that comes out and flows into the household.
Hello, world. Welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I am Stephanie Anne-Lyse, also known as Anne-Lyse Wealth. I'm a financial coach and an author. I self-published my first book, Dream of Legacy, a guide to help dreamers reach financial independence and build generational wealth. In this podcast, I'll have conversations with experts and thought leaders who dare to follow their dreams. You'll hear about their journey and their money stories. I hope it inspires you, dreamers out there, to live life on your own terms.
Come on, dreamers, let's change the world!
This episode is brought to you by Dream of Legacy. Check out dreamoflegacy.com for resources to assist you on your journey to financial independence. Hello, welcome to the Dreamers Podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Lyse Wealth, and I'm so glad you're here for this episode with Pauleanna Reid. She's a journalist, an author, a celebrity ghostwriter, a senior contributor at ForbesWomen and Business Insider, and the founder of mentorship program New Girl on the Blok. In this episode, Pauleanna shares how she went from dropping out of college to building a very successful agency, the WritersBlok. She talks about being in debt and how she got out of it, how taking advice from a mentor and being consistent helped her get her first writing gig. She shares advice for future entrepreneurs and side hustlers who are interested in turning their side hustle into a full-time job, what it takes to build a successful business that can stand the test of time. As a writer myself, I've been following Pauleanna's work, so it's definitely been an honor to have her on the podcast. She's generous with information that she knows or she has, and is definitely a champion for women. Here is Pauleanna Reid. Pauleanna Reid, welcome to the Dreamers Podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, can you tell our listeners a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Pauleanna Reid, and I am a millennial woman who has fought for her dreams and won. I'm widely known as a journalist. I'm currently a senior contributor at Forbes and Business Insider, in addition to owning and operating my own agency called the WritersBlok, which is a full-service celebrity ghostwriting agency. My team and I, which is all female, all women of color, we help the world's leaders and doers who are shaping the future turn their personal stories into powerful brand assets. When I'm not reporting on women-led companies or running one of my own, I am volunteering, I'm traveling, I am mentoring, I am the mentor to several, I would say, well over 200 mentees. I run a program called New Girl on the Blok, and I truly feel that mentorship is one of the most important contributions that I could make with my life.
You mentioned earlier that you were a contributor for Forbes, Business Insider, and you have your agency. Can you tell us maybe about the steps that you took prior to getting your first big opportunity as a writer?
I would say my first big opportunity happened back in 2010. People assume that Forbes and Business Insider, yes, I'm not even going to downplay, they are fantastic. But when I got my start as a writer, writing for newspapers was actually one of the first eye-opening opportunities that landed on my desk. And the reason I say that is because it was where I learned a lot of the key disciplines that I execute today. Time management, I developed my writing style. I developed my interview skills. I had to report to an editor. I had to learn how to receive critical feedback. I worked long hours. I remember when I interviewed Olivia Newton-John, I interviewed her at 2 a.m. because of the time difference. It was my first interactions with high profile individuals. So I had to learn how to conduct myself in a professional manner. And so there's so many things that have really groomed me so that I can be a valuable asset to the publications that I write for today. Leading up to that event, I was discovered off of my blog, actually. So I dropped out of school 2008. I met my mentor, my first mentor in 2009. She then suggested that I start my own blog. So in 2009, 2010, I started a blog. After a year of being very dedicated and very consistent and passionate, although I didn't have hundreds of thousands of views. I had maybe less than 30 views a month at the time. But she identified a passion and a fire within me that was like no other. And she then called me one day and asked if I wanted to be considered for an opportunity to be a freelance junior writer at a publishing house. And when I said yes, she then hooked up the interview, and there was no resume involved, no real formal portfolio, just my blog. And I was hired. And that was where I freelanced for 3 to 4 years thereafter.
Interesting. So how did your mentor come across your blog?
She was the first person that said, hey, if you want to be a writer, then you need to write on a public level. Writing in your little diaries and journals is not going to help launch your career. And I think that there's a bigger lesson here. I think a lot of women, research shows that we often hide away or shy away from highlighting our accomplishments or sharing our ideas with the world. I know a lot of millennials often, tuck their ideas away because we're afraid someone's going to steal them or copy them or whatever the case may be. But I mean, there are a lot of good people in the world, and people are willing to invest in you if you open your mouth and raise your hand. And so she said, listen, if you want to go anywhere in life, you have to publicly display what you bring to the table and what you want. And so that's when Pauleannareid.com started. And she just quietly observed me over the next year. And then after a year is when she offered me a position.
It's very interesting what you said about mentorship and the role that your mentor played in you starting your career as a writer. Some of our listeners might be interested in starting a career and they're not sure how to find mentors. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how you were able to find someone who added this much value to your life and your career?
I mean, just like you would a therapist, a romantic partner, or a friendship, I think it's really important to identify what values are important to you, what characteristics are important to you. I think you should be looking to connect with people who think differently than you, who just don't say yes to everything, who can provide critical feedback. And so I found my very first mentor. Her name is Shanae Ingleton. I found her on Facebook. And I just loved everything about her. I loved her Black girl magic. I loved her confidence. I loved that she was an entrepreneur. She was very well-spoken, articulate, smart. These were qualities that I wanted. At the time, I was very young. I maybe was 19, 20, 21. And I knew those qualities were inside me, deep inside me, but I needed help pulling them out. And so I approached her on social media. I believe it was I think I still remember the date. It might've been December 28th, 2008 or something like that. And I just asked her to dinner and I said, hey, I'd love to learn from you. And she was so receptive. I mean, we're talking a very long time ago. Today, I think the strategy is going to be a little bit different. We can speak to that. But back in the day, when Facebook was relatively new, people were excited to connect offline, right? Strangers were excited to meet up. And so that's how I approached her. And with my other mentors, honestly, they organically came into my life. I feel like when you're walking in the direction of your purpose, books will fly off the shelves, resources and funding will make themselves apparent to you, and the right people will show up. My other mentors came into my life through introductions. Perhaps I was at an event. One of my greatest mentors, Stuart, he was speaking on stage and I was I know he's meant to be my advisor. And so, over the next 3 or 4 months, I was working with his assistant to get on his calendar. And, he's been my mentor for the last 9 years. So I think just organically it needs to happen. I don't believe in forced interactions. And so that would be my advice.
Great advice. So it seems that it's a lot of even just putting out there what it is that you want to accomplish and just being open to interacting with people different from you?
I think that the other thing too, I mean, that was like several years ago, but today the game is a little bit different. Like now, if you were to pull up on a mentor, you need to have receipts. You should really show what you've been working on in a really cool visual way, right? Like if you're going to email someone and ask them for a 20-minute coffee date, ask if you could meet with them, job shadow them. They want to know that the investment is going to be worth it. So you should be showing them your portfolio. You should be showing them the projects that you're interested in, the research that you've conducted, like show them a breadcrumb trail that illustrates your work ethic and your determination and your commitment, because no one wants to kick it with you or spend time with you if you're going to just flip flop, if you're going to quit after a year, right? So you really want to make sure that it's worth their time. And I think the reason why my mentors have been in my life for so long is simply because their ROI is so high. Like I am like the ideal mentee. I'm going to say that with confidence because all of my mentors who have planted seeds, I've watered that seed. I've added sunlight to that seed. I've added new soil to that seed. I've nurtured that seed. And I'm at the top of my game in each category that I participate in. So like if I pick up the phone and I email them or ask them a question or I need anything, I always get it because they know that I'm going to do right by it.
Love it. I read an article where you mentioned that you actually failed English in high school and that you dropped out of college. But that didn't make you give up on your dream. You went on to become a, successful writer, a speaker, and some of the listeners might have dreams that they might be afraid that they don't have the quote unquote qualifications on paper. How did you go about educating yourself outside of, the traditional route?
So I think it's really important to understand that even with a piece of paper, you still need to develop street smarts. And that's something you will never learn in the classroom. You still need to understand, the rules of the arena, the rules of the game. Like I was on Instagram last night and I was telling my followers that this is a game of chess. This is a game of poker. Like in your free time, you should be studying those two activities, And so I was telling them that it's very apparent that some of y'all are playing checkers and Connect Four. You know what I mean? Like you're not speaking the same language. You're not making strategic moves. And so it's really important. So to answer your question, yeah, I dropped out. But, as a dropout, I run circles around some of my peers with 4-year degrees. And the reason why that is because I study the landscape. I study the players. I study their role, their function, their responsibilities. I think that a lot of the game is developing communication and people skills. I think a lot of the game is just understanding that you shouldn't burn bridges. You don't know who's watching you, what power they hold. So you should be operating at a peak performance all the time because you just don't know who's creeping in the background. And that's happened to me several times where, I've had phone calls or emails from individuals I highly respect. And they, the first line of their email is, "Oh, I've been watching you for 10 years, or I've been following you online for years, or, someone told me I had to get in touch with you." People are always watching. And so I just think that there's certain rules of the game that need to be followed. And so I think that when people go to school and they get a piece of paper, I think they forget that when you enter the real world and you start gaining the real world experience, you are a student again. You know what I mean? You are someone who has to put in the work to climb your way up the ranks.
I love what you said about putting in the work. If you've been around for a while, then you know how much I care about financial freedom for all. One thing that often gets in the way of that is debt. That's why I'm happy to announce that I've partnered with an amazing organization called Juno. Juno helps you get lower interest rates by using the power of group negotiation. It is a completely free resource that you can use to secure lower interest rates on new and existing student loans. Head to the link in the episode show notes to find out more. Sunday, Skincare Day, is one of the ways I keep my sanity in these crazy times. Dreamino is an all-natural, Black-owned skincare brand, carefully handcrafted by parents who could not find the proper care solutions to address their family skin problems. All Dreamino products are made of organic and high-quality ingredients, meticulously chosen to give your skin the smooth results and the glow it deserves. Consistently, one of my mentors always says that there's someone watching you that has the power to bless you. So it's important to always be on your A game.
Exactly.
So can you share an early money memory that you have when it comes to your childhood and how it impacted you as an adult?
That's a great question. An early money memory. An early money memory that I experienced as a child is just watching the evolution of how my parents handled money. Across the board, my parents, both sides come from very large families, and we had humble beginnings. And so my parents believed in, whether we had money or we didn't have money, they believed in creating experiences. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, you can still live a very full life. And so my parents exposed us to a lot of things, even when they couldn't really afford it at times. So it could have been soccer, it could have been ballet, ski trips, vacations. Like, they really wanted to fill our lives with experiences so that we wouldn't necessarily we wouldn't be desperate to search for them. Much to my experiences now, like, I operate in the same way. I've had my own hiccups with money and I've weathered my own financial storms, but I will always go out of my way to curate an experience and a memory that I'll never forget.
You alluded to your earlier financial troubles. I read that 4 years ago, you were $52,000 in debt and you got out of it in 2 years. So, our listeners are in different stages of their personal finance journey, and some are definitely trying to get out of debt. And can you share maybe your process?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first thing is around mindset, right? You have to identify what the problem is. I think some people don't even want to admit it. I think some people don't even open their bills because they don't want the truth to stare them in the face. So you first have to admit that you have a spending problem, or you could refine or improve in certain areas when it comes to budgeting, spending, saving, etc. So that's really what I had to do as a foundational principle, is like rewire my money mindset to really believe and understand that I am worthy of abundance and I'm worthy of a debt-free, stress-free life. And I started reciting affirmations and money mantras and really setting the tone for my day first thing in the morning. The next thing I did was I raised my hand and asked for help, and I curated my money team. Today that consists of a wealth advisor, a financial advisor, a bookkeeper, an accountant, and a CFO. 4 years ago, obviously I couldn't afford all those people. So I started with a financial advisor, someone who could give me advice, look at my numbers, and really help me budget, and help me establish goals. Money needs a purpose. Money is currency. It flows. So it needs to go somewhere, right? So like, you need to have plans for your money. If you were to be blessed with the financial stability of your desires, like, what would you do with it? Would you put it towards retirement? Would you save towards a house? Would you help your kids go through college? There needs to be plans for your money in order for it to flow abundantly into your life. And so my financial advisor helped me do that. And again, much like we talked about with a mentor, a romantic partner, a friend, a therapist, the same rules apply for an advisor. This is someone who's going to build and grow with you over several years. And you want to make sure that you do background checks. You want to ask for case studies of other examples, other success stories that they've had with clients. You want to make sure they're certified. You want to make sure that this person's going to be all up in your business. You want to make sure that you trust them and you feel comfortable to be vulnerable, because that's the other thing too. Like, if you're not willing to be vulnerable on this journey, if you're going to just lie to yourself and others, if your ego is attached to how much you make and your net worth, it's like, I mean, you've already disqualified yourself out the game. So a financial advisor was the second thing. And then I started putting away as little as $50 a month, that's all I could afford at the time. Right. So like, I think it's important to know that you can start anywhere. Doesn't matter, $5 a month, whatever. The point is you've started, and you can always increase over time as you begin to make more money. And then the fourth thing I'll say is that I developed a plan to make more, earn more. Like if you just continue to pay $50 a month, I mean, I don't know how far that's going to get you over time. So you need to develop, I think in 2020, I mean, we all were thinking about ways to increase our earnings because we weren't really sure what was going to happen with our jobs and the world, et cetera. And so that was the fourth thing I did. And the fifth thing I did was I defined zero on an entirely new level. So what that means is for most people, when their bank account hits zero, it really means $0. For others like myself on a financial diet, when we say zero could mean 10 grand, 20 grand. It just means that you've moved the needle. So I'm never actually at zero. My new zero is 20, 25 grand.
I love it. Great steps that you shared here. I particularly love what you said about creating a plan for your money, because, sometimes we are under the impression that we are, in debt because we don't earn enough. And, sometimes it's the case, right? But if you don't kind of get everything out of control and create a plan for your money, it doesn't matter whether you earn $100,000 or $1 million, you won't be able to out-earn your financial habits if they're poor. Like if you spend too much, you're going to spend too much, even if you make twice as much. So, just taking control of your finances and setting limits, like you said, defining what zero means for you. Those are great steps to help you get your finances stronger.
Love it.
You started writing. It was a side hustle for you, right?
Yeah, I was a side hustler for about 10 years before I transitioned to full-time.
And it looks like now your business, I guess 10 years later, is on track to hit 7 figures, sorry?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing very, very well, definitely in the multiple 6 figures range. And my long-term goal is to be the first millionaire in my family.
So how did you adjust from, doing this as a side hustle to becoming a full-time entrepreneur? When you're an entrepreneur, especially in the beginning, it's harder to predict your income and you kind of have to eat what you kill. So do you have any money tip for someone who might be considering following your path and turning their side hustle into a full-time job?
That's a really good question, because in the beginning, you wear every hat possible. You are the marketer, the janitor, the CEO, the assistant, like you are everything. So, which means you're investing money into multiple areas. And for a long time, I didn't take any money out of the business for myself. I didn't have a paycheck. Well, most of the time I'd be in the negative because I was investing into different people and projects and tools and systems. I advise that you focus on building community first before anything, right? Once you have a community, you're able to test your idea. And then based on the data, you can decide whether or not this idea is worth pursuing. Right? Because it's not about your feelings at all. It's about the information at hand. Because the thing is, I feel like we have enough t-shirt lines. I want to see more young entrepreneurs. And honestly, most people are doing an excellent job at this, but this is for the people who are kind of stuck. Solve a problem. If you are solving a problem at a community level, industry level, or the world at large, you will always be in demand. You will get to where you want to be. You will earn the income of your dreams. Honestly, this is no shade, but it's like people are stuck because it's like they're not solving a real problem, a real need. So that's why you're not getting, your product isn't flying off the shelves and people are not walking into your store. And it's like not solving a problem that's big enough. And sometimes I do find that, some of the women that I have mentored in the past, they tend to go towards like beauty or vanity or whatnot. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there will be a higher demand for someone who is, let's say I have a mentee who works with individuals who suffer from like skin rashes and like irritations. And she develops products to help clear marks on your skin and whatnot. She's going to have longevity in her career and she's doing exceptionally well versus someone who is performing lash extensions, right? Both are great businesses, but one is going to be around 20 years from now.
I really love what you just said there, because I think along those lines, sometimes when we start businesses or we develop a product, it's easy to want to kind of like sell to everyone, right? But
yeah,
when you target your audience, the more specific you are, the better you can serve them. And I think it's kind of like very similar to what you're saying in terms of, are you solving a real problem, or are you offering something that's a bunch of people are already offering? And if you are solving a specific problem, then you're probably more likely to be in demand.
Right. Exactly.
Of it. So talk to us about your New Girls on the Block mentorship program.
Yeah, absolutely. So New Girl on the Block is a mentorship program, but we like to say it's way sicker than your average. We help turn distant dreams into noteworthy achievements. And so the program has aided and supported well over 200 women in 11 countries. And I mean, we're a very small and mighty community. Applicants have to fill out a form on the website. I do not take everyone who applies. Every year, we probably get about, 1,000 applicants around there. And as you can see, in total, in the last 5 years I've been mentoring, our numbers are significantly low. I would say no more than 300. So I am very selective who I invest my time into. I only want to feed people who are hungry. I have a 98% success rate. Many of my mentees have gone on to build businesses of their own, earn side hustle incomes, build their confidence, their leadership skills, whether they're an entrepreneur or in the corporate world or a student. And it's really important to me that, I spearhead this initiative because I believe in sisterhood. I think people are going through real problems, and it's really nice when you have a group of individuals that you can really, really lean and depend on to discuss your problems with.
So you openly talk about being diagnosed with depression. And, it's definitely something that's real. It's a common struggle that people go through that we don't necessarily talk about as much as we should, especially in the Black community, even though, things have changed for the better over the past few years. But, can you talk about how do you manage your mental health today? Because, being a business owner like yourself, it's stressful. How do you make sure that everything is under control?
I mean, you can't really make sure everything's under control. The world of entrepreneurship it's unpredictable. It is an arena where you pay a psychological price every single day that most people will never understand. It is a test, a constant challenge. The world is on fire on a consistent basis. You have to manage your team. You have to manage their emotions. You have to manage client expectations. You have to manage your finances. You have to manage your time. There's so many balls in the air that it's not even a joke. So honestly speaking, I don't know how I manage it. I don't have an answer for that, but I show up every day. I try my best every day. I try to give myself grace. I delegate. I work out 3 times a week to make sure that my mental health there are several mental health benefits to even going for a walk, spending time with nature, grounding yourself on the grass barefoot, so that's really important to me. And all you can do is your best, and you have to be patient with the process. I started my first company at 21. I'm now 33, and I'm just starting to hit my peak. You know what I mean? So I think most people don't stick to anything long enough to master it. I mean, I've been writing for over 10 years at this point, and I could go another 50, right? Whereas I think people want results way too soon. And that's really why they end up crumbling under the pressure, because they're not patient. When my mentees step to me and they're crying about the fact that they're not getting views on their blog or whatever, right? I'm I cannot empathize with that. Because I come from an era where none of the shit even it was mind blowing to think about what Instagram could be. Twitter just started. Facebook was still new. It was for college kids. So I come from a space where we all started at zero. So what are you crying about? It takes time to build something. If you look at any of the legacy brands, right? They have been around for 60, 70 years. Their great, great, great grandfather started a lot of these companies. it takes time. So the fact that people can think that they can jump into the world of entrepreneurship, that they could just build something in 3 months, a year, and honestly speaking, there are some unicorns who can. So I'm not saying that's impossible, but for the most part, like for the average person, like it could take you a good 5 years, maybe even 7, 10, who knows? But the point is, you got to stay committed regardless. I don't care if it takes you 100 years, regardless of whether you made a single penny during that time, you should still have the same love, the same fire, the same burning desire to solve the problem because it's that important to you.
And I think, that goes to show how important it is to focus on something that you're actually, interested in, something that you're passionate about. So you can, deal with the fact that you're not getting the success that you want right away, and that'll take time. If you're doing something just for money, then yes, you'll probably give up a lot sooner.
Exactly.
So what has been the best money advice that you've received so far?
The best money advice I received: never let what a man brings to the table be the only thing you have to eat. I think that women should definitely have their independence. I think that we should just be very mindful of the people and the partners we bring into our life. I think that we should have a say in the financial decisions within the household. I think that we should be in the know and aware of the money that comes out and flows into the household. If you are in a romantic relationship and you have the desire to get married, you are part of a team. And I think women should have equal say within that team dynamic. I mean, and the reason why I say this is because definitely when I was, younger and I was dating and I was in the streets, I had my fair share of depending on men for gifts and trips and financial gain. It never led me to anywhere prosperous. Having financial independence and knowing that if something were to happen and I were to lose it all, I could bounce back, that makes me feel really confident.
That's such an important topic because even like with millennials, a lot of times we kind of defer the financial decisions to our spouse or our partner, but we really have to know what's going on and we have to have a say in how the money is managed because you don't want to get stuck in a situation just because you don't have the means. So being financially independent is definitely a message that I am all for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love to end the interview with a round of rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Tell me about a book that changed your perspective on life.
That's a great question. A book that changed my perspective on life. I'll say anything by Sister Souljah. I think so often we default to self-help books, and I find a lot of joy in actually reading things that have nothing to do with what I do for work. Because it helps me stay curious. It helps me to question things. It helps me to be imaginative. So I like getting lost in fiction.
Love it. One thing about money you wish you could tell your younger self.
I wish I could tell my younger self to cut up all your credit cards and don't even, if you can't handle it, if you can't handle the responsibility, don't even start.
What's the best investment in yourself you've made so far?
Definitely betting on myself, believing in myself, believing that I could do it. Because I do remember when I started my businesses, when I first wrote my book, there are a lot of people who were under the impression that I wouldn't make it, that I wouldn't finish, that I was just a big dreamer. And everything I'm doing today, I knew it would happen. I saw it, I dreamt it, I felt it. I knew in my heart. I'm not even surprised I am where I am today. I just really, really, really understood my strengths. I just committed to the process. I saw myself on stages when I was a nobody. In my mind, I saw it every single night. I knew that I would be able to one day be on stage and be able to feel the energy of thousands of people in the crowd. I just knew it.
I love it. Fill in the blanks in 3 words or less. Money to me is
freedom, stability, and happiness.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I want to be known for someone who gave more than what they took from this world.
Well, Pauleanna, thank you so much for sharing your experience, your advice with our listeners. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Can you tell everybody where to find you?
Yeah, I am literally everywhere, all social channels under Pauleanna Reid. And my website is newgirlontheblok.com, pauleannareid.com, and my company site is WritersBlok without the C.com.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, dreamers. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Pauleanna Reid. Coming up on the podcast this month, we have personal finance expert and Dave Ramsey personality, Ryan O'Neill, credit expert and founder of Luxurious Credit, Arnita Johnson Hall. If you enjoyed today's episode, here's what you can do to support me and help more dreamers discover the podcast. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. I read every single review and I'll select one review to read on the podcast every month. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Share the podcast with your family, friends, and coworkers. And if you really enjoyed today's episode, tag me on Instagram at thedreamers.podcast and let me know what you liked about it. All right, dreamers, that's it for today. I will see you back here next week for another episode of the Dreamers Podcast.
Okay, dreamers, time to build this legacy.
This podcast is for general information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax, legal, financial planning, insurance, accounting, investment, or any other kind of professional advice or services. Please consult with an appropriate tax, financial, or legal professional to receive appropriate advice based on your situation.